My name is Amy Barnes, and at 25, I was working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over my head. Meanwhile, my younger brother Jake had everything handed to him on a silver platter. College tuition, a new car, even a condo our parents bought him as a graduation gift. I was delivering pizzas in the rain when my life changed forever. An unexpected encounter with someone from my family's past was about to turn my world upside down and teach my parents the ultimate lesson about fairness. If you enjoy stories about family drama and sweet justice, stick around until the end. Before I continue, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our storytelling community. Trust me, this journey from betrayal to triumph is one you won't want to miss. I grew up in what most would consider a comfortable middle-class family in suburban Pennsylvania. Our house wasn't extravagant, but it was spacious enough for all of us, with a decent backyard where I spent countless hours playing. My father, Richard, worked as a financial advisor at a local firm, while my mother, Helen, was an elementary school teacher. For the first decade of my life, I never felt like there was anything unusual about our family dynamics. My parents seemed to love me unconditionally. I remember my father teaching me to ride a bike, spending hours running alongside me until I finally got the hang of it. My mother would read to me every night before bed, doing all the character voices that made me giggle uncontrollably. They attended my school plays, displayed my artwork on the refrigerator, and celebrated my accomplishments with genuine enthusiasm. Everything changed when I turned 10. That was the year my brother Jake was born. At first, I was excited about having a sibling. I envisioned myself as the cool big sister who would teach him all sorts of things and protect him from playground bullies. I even helped my parents decorate his nursery, painting little stars on one wall that my mother said looked beautiful. "Amy, you're going to be such a wonderful big sister," she told me, and I believed her. The shift in my parents' attention was gradual but unmistakable. Initially, I understood that babies require a lot of care and patience. I tried to be mature about sharing my parents' time and affection. But as the months turned into years, the imbalance became increasingly apparent. By the time I was 13 and Jake was 3, our parents' preferential treatment had become obvious, even to my young mind. Jake's tantrums were met with patience and understanding, while my adolescent emotions were often dismissed as dramatics. His accomplishments, no matter how small, were celebrated extravagantly, while mine were acknowledged with just a quick, "good job," before the conversation returned to Jake. I threw myself into academics and extracurricular activities, partly because I genuinely enjoyed them, but also because I hoped my achievements would finally make my parents notice me again. I joined the debate team, took piano lessons, and maintained straight A's in all my classes. I still remember staying up until midnight working on a science project about renewable energy that won first place in the county fair. My parents didn't attend the ceremony, though. Jake had a cold, and they didn't want to leave him with a babysitter. My piano recital in 8th grade was particularly painful. I had practiced Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major for months, mastering the difficult runs and emotional dynamics. The auditorium was filled with proud parents clutching bouquets and cameras. My seat in the front row was flanked by empty chairs on both sides. My parents had promised to attend, but at the last minute, Jake's T-ball practice took precedence. I played flawlessly that night, earning a standing ovation from strangers. But the hollow feeling in my chest overshadowed any pride I might have felt. During these difficult years, my friendship with Stephanie Wilson became my lifeline. Stephanie lived across the street and understood my situation better than anyone. Her parents often invited me over for dinner, and her mother, Linda, would sometimes attend my school events when my own parents couldn't. Or wouldn't. "Your parents are missing out on seeing what an amazing person you're becoming," Linda told me once after watching me perform in the school play. Her words meant everything to me. The disparity in how my brother and I were treated extended beyond emotional support to material things as well. When I turned 16 and earned my driver's license, I asked my parents if they might help me buy a used car. "We think it would be good for you to earn it yourself, Amy," my father said. "It builds character." I didn't argue. Instead, I got a job at the local library shelving books after school and on weekends. For 8 months, I saved every penny until I had enough to buy a 15-year-old Honda Civic with fading paint and nearly 200,000 miles on the odometer. I was proud of my purchase, even though it sometimes broke down and required repairs that ate into my savings. 2 years later, when Jake turned 16, our parents surprised him with a brand new Ford Mustang, complete with custom rims and a premium sound system. I remember standing in the driveway, watching Jake jump up and down with excitement while my father handed him the keys. "You only get your first car once," my mother explained when she noticed my expression. "We wanted it to be special for him." "It could have been special for me too," I replied quietly. But she had already turned away to take pictures of Jake sitting behind the wheel. That night, I cried myself to sleep, not because of the car itself, but because of what it represented. The message was clear: Jake was worth investing in. I was not. Despite everything, I continued to excel academically. By my senior year, I had been accepted to several prestigious universities, including my dream school, Northwestern University. I imagined my parents would finally be proud, that maybe they would recognize my hard work and determination. Instead, their response was lukewarm at best. "That's going to be expensive," was my father's first comment. "You should apply for more scholarships." Meanwhile, Jake's mediocre report card with mostly BS and CS was displayed prominently on the refrigerator, celebrated as if he had won a Nobel Prize. As high school came to an end, I found myself looking forward to college with mixed emotions. I was excited about the opportunities ahead, but saddened by the realization that leaving home didn't feel like much of a loss. The house had ceased to feel like my home long ago. Getting accepted to Northwestern University should have been one of the happiest moments of my life. Instead, it became the catalyst for one of the most difficult conversations I'd ever had with my parents. "We need to talk about finances," my father said one evening in March of my senior year. He spread several papers across the dining room table, including my acceptance letter and financial aid package. "The scholarships help, but there's still a significant gap." I nodded, having already reviewed the numbers myself. "I know. I was hoping maybe you could help with some of it. I can work part-time and take out some loans for the rest." My mother and father exchanged glances. "Amy," my mother began gently, "we think it would be best if you handled your education expenses on your own. Your father and I believe in fostering independence." The word struck me like a physical blow. "Independence? You mean like the independence you're fostering in Jake by buying him a new car?" "That's different," my father said firmly. "And besides, we're already setting aside money for Jake's college fund. Tuition costs keep rising, and we need to be prepared." The injustice of it all left me speechless. My brother, who had shown no particular academic prowess or ambition, had a college fund waiting for him. Meanwhile, I was being told to fend for myself despite my outstanding academic record. "So you're saving for his future, but not for mine?" I finally managed to ask. "You're resourceful, Amy," my mother replied. "You always have been. Jake needs more support." I left that conversation with a clarity I hadn't possessed before. My parents had made their choices, and now I would make mine. I accepted Northwestern's offer and prepared to finance my education independently through a combination of scholarships, loans, and work. My first semester was a shock to the system. Between challenging classes and working 20 hours a week at Moonlight Cafe near campus, I barely had time to sleep, let alone enjoy the typical college social life. My roommate, Ashley Thompson, often invited me to parties or study groups, but I usually had to decline. "You work too hard," Ashley would tell me. "Everyone needs a break sometimes." She was right. but breaks were a luxury I couldn't afford. Every hour not spent studying was an hour I could be earning money to reduce my growing student loan debt. Despite these challenges, I found moments of joy and connection. Professor Nancy Chin from the marketing department took an interest in my work after I submitted a particularly insightful analysis for her consumer behavior class. "You have a natural talent for understanding market dynamics," she told me after class one day. "Have you considered pursuing this field professionally?" Her encouragement meant the world to me. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and valued for my abilities. Professor Chin became my mentor, helping me navigate both academic challenges and career planning. She even connected me with a summer internship at a boutique marketing firm in Chicago, which proved to be an invaluable experience. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents continued to deteriorate. During my first Thanksgiving break, I drove my old Honda the 6 hours home, only to find the house decorated for Jake's upcoming football game. The entire weekend revolved around his activities, with little interest shown in my college experience. The final straw came when my father proudly announced at dinner that they had upgraded Jake's Mustang to the latest model because he had outgrown the previous one after just 2 years. "You bought him another new car?" I asked incredulously. "He needed something more reliable for driving to his college visits next year," my mother explained. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Do you realize I'm working 20 hours a week just to afford books and basic expenses? That I've taken out loans that will take me years to repay? All while maintaining a 3.9 GPA? My mother looked uncomfortable. "Amy, we've always known you could handle yourself. Jake isn't as resourceful as you are." "That's because you've never given him the chance," I exclaimed. "You've handed him everything while making me work for every single thing I have." The conversation devolved into tears and accusations, with my father eventually telling me I was being ungrateful for all they had done for me. I left the next morning, cutting my visit short, and drove back to campus with a newfound determination to create a life that didn't depend on their approval or support. As college progressed, I saw my family less and less. My relationship with Kyle Henderson, a computer science major I met in my second year, provided some emotional stability, but even that suffered under the weight of my work and study schedule. "I never see you anymore," Kyle complained after I canceled our plans for the third time in 2 weeks to pick up an extra shift at the cafe. "I understand you're busy, but relationships need time too." He was right, of course, but I didn't know how to fix it. My financial situation gave me little flexibility. Eventually, after months of growing apart, Kyle and I decided to end our relationship. It was another loss in a life that already felt full of them, but I buried myself deeper in work and studies to avoid dwelling on it. By my senior year, I had worked my way up to assistant manager at Moonlight Cafe, which offered slightly better pay and more consistent hours. Professor Chin had also arranged a paid research position for me in the marketing department, which not only helped financially, but also strengthened my resume. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in marketing and a minor in business analytics. My parents attended the ceremony, arriving late and leaving immediately after the diplomas were distributed. Jake, now a high school senior, didn't come at all, claiming he had baseball practice. As I stood alone outside the auditorium, watching other graduates celebrating with their families, Professor Chin approached me. "Your parents left already?" she asked, noticing my solitary state. I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. "Well, I'm still here," she said, giving me a warm hug. "And I couldn't be prouder of what you've accomplished." In that moment, I realized that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes, it's the people who choose to see your worth and stand by you when it matters most. Armed with my Northwestern degree and Professor Chen's glowing recommendation, I entered the job market with cautious optimism. The economy had been slowly recovering from a recession, but entry-level positions in marketing remained fiercely competitive. I applied to dozens of companies in Chicago and surrounding areas, tailoring each application meticulously and following up with personalized emails. Weeks passed with only a handful of interviews and no offers. My student loan grace period was rapidly coming to an end, and panic began to set in. I couldn't afford to be unemployed when those payments kicked in. "The job market is brutal right now," said Tiffany Brooks, one of my new roommates in the cramped 3-bedroom apartment we shared in a less desirable part of Chicago. Tiffany worked in human resources and had seen firsthand how many qualified candidates were fighting for every position. "You might need to consider temporary alternatives while you continue searching for your dream job," she suggested gently. Pride wanted me to resist, but practicality won out. I returned to what I knew: food service. I secured a morning shift at Sunrise Cafe, working from 5:30 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. The pay barely covered my share of the rent and utilities. So I added evening shifts delivering pizzas for Giovanni's Italian restaurant from 5 p.m. until midnight. My life became a punishing routine. Wake up at 4:30 a.m., work at the cafe, catch a 2-hour nap if I was lucky, deliver pizzas until midnight, collapse into bed, and repeat. 6 days a week, with only Sundays to catch up on laundry, grocery shopping, and continued job applications in my field. My second roommate, Melissa Carter, rarely saw me except in passing. "You're like a ghost," she commented one rare evening when I was home between shifts. "This can't be sustainable, Amy." She was right. Dark circles had become permanent fixtures under my eyes. I'd lost weight because I often didn't have time to eat properly. My immune system weakened, resulting in frequent colds that I couldn't afford to let keep me from working. The delivery job at Giovanni's was particularly grueling. Chicago winters meant navigating icy roads and trudging through snow to deliver pizzas that customers often complained were not hot enough despite my best efforts. The tips were inconsistent, and some nights I barely broke even on gas money. My one bright spot was my friendship with Jasmine Rodriguez, another delivery driver at Giovanni's. Jasmine was a single mother working multiple jobs to support her 5-year-old daughter. Her resilience and positive attitude despite her circumstances inspired me. "We do what we have to do now so we can do what we want to do later," she would say during our shared deliveries. "This is just a chapter, not the whole book." I clung to those words on my darkest days, especially after learning about Jake's latest windfall. It happened during a rare phone call with my mother. I had been maintaining minimal contact with my parents, usually brief check-ins every few weeks. This particular call started routinely enough with small talk about the weather and her garden club activities. Then she excitedly shared the good news. "Jake graduated last month, you know," she said, as if I might have forgotten my own brother's milestone. "Your father and I are so proud. He's accepted a position at your father's friend's investment firm." "That's nice," I replied flatly, knowing Jake had no qualifications for such a role beyond nepotism. "And since he'll be working downtown, we helped him purchase a condo in that new development near the river. It's absolutely gorgeous, Amy. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a rooftop pool. And we got him a Tesla as a graduation present. Electric cars are the future, you know." I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "A condo and a Tesla? Mom, I've been working 2 jobs just to make rent in an apartment with 2 roommates. I haven't had a day off in 3 months." There was an uncomfortable pause. "Well, everyone's journey is different, sweetheart." Jake needed a little boost to get started. "You've always been so independent." After that call, I cried for the first time in years. Not dainty tears, but ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. My roommates found me curled up on the bathroom floor, inconsolable. "This isn't fair," I kept repeating as Tiffany held me. "None of this is fair." "Life rarely is," Melissa said, sitting on the edge of the bathtub. "But you're stronger than anyone I know, Amy. You'll get through this." The following week, I came down with a severe case of bronchitis that quickly developed into pneumonia. I had ignored the initial symptoms, unable to afford missing work, until I literally collapsed during a pizza delivery. The customer, an elderly woman named Dorothy, called an ambulance despite my weak protests. 3 days in the hospital resulted in medical bills that dwarfed my already substantial student loans. When I reluctantly called my parents to ask for help, my father's response was predictable. "We're a bit overextended right now with Jake's condo and car payments," he explained. "Maybe you should look into a payment plan with the hospital." I didn't bother telling them that I had already done exactly that, or that I would be paying off this illness for years to come. The final indignity came during a family gathering for my grandmother's 80th birthday. I had saved for weeks to afford the plane ticket home, wanting to be there for the grandmother who had always shown me unconditional love. The entire extended family was present, including aunts, uncles, and cousins I rarely saw. Throughout the evening, the conversation repeatedly turned to Jake's new job, condo, and car. Relatives congratulated my parents on raising such a successful son. No one asked about my life or career, despite the fact that I had independently put myself through a prestigious university and was supporting myself entirely. During dinner, my Uncle Frank raised his glass in a toast to Jake, the newest financial was in the family, and to Richard and Helen, who have given him such a strong foundation for success. Glasses clinked around the table as I sat in silence, invisibility settling over me like a familiar cloak. Later, as I helped my grandmother open her gifts, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "I see how hard you work, Amy. I'm proud of you." Those simple words were a balm to my wounded spirit, but they couldn't completely erase the pain of my parents' continued favoritism. Back in Chicago, depression began to take hold. I questioned my worth, my decisions, even my existence. What was the point of working myself to exhaustion when no matter what I achieved, it would never be enough to earn my parents' equal treatment? But somewhere beneath the despair, a stubborn flame of determination still burned. I refused to be defined by my parents' failure to value me properly. I would keep going, keep fighting, keep believing that someday things would change. I had no idea how soon that change would come or from what unexpected direction. It was a Friday night in late October. The kind of Chicago evening where wind whips between skyscrapers and rain falls at a spiteful angle that renders umbrellas useless. I was on my last delivery for Giovanni's, a large pepperoni and mushroom pizza bound for one of those luxury high-rises along Lake Shore Drive. The doorman eyed my dripping form with barely concealed disdain as I entered the marble lobby, pizza bag clutched against my chest. "Delivery for apartment 2103, I said, trying to stand on the rubber mat to avoid puddling on the polished floor. He picked up the house phone, announced me, then nodded toward the elevator. "They're expecting you." The elevator whisked me to the 21st floor, where I found apartment 2103 and knocked. When the door opened, I found myself face to face with a distinguished-looking man in his early 60s, silver hair, tailored casual clothes, and the confident posture of someone accustomed to success. I launched into my standard delivery spiel. "Good evening, sir. 1 large pepperoni and mushroom from Giovanni's. Your total comes to $24.50. The man stared at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Then his expression shifted to shock. "Amy? Amy Barnes?" I froze, pizza still extended between us. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" He shook his head slightly, as if clearing a fog. "You probably don't remember me. I'm Harold Barnes, your father's brother." The pizza nearly slipped from my grasp. Uncle Harold was almost a mythical figure in our family, rarely mentioned except in hushed tones. All I knew was that he and my father had had some kind of falling out before I was born, and they hadn't spoken in decades. "Uncle Harold," I repeated dumbly. He ushered me inside, taking the pizza and placing it on a nearby table. His apartment was stunning, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a panoramic view of Lake Michigan and the city's skyline. Modern art adorned the walls, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a design magazine. "I apologize for the shock," he said, gesturing for me to sit down. "I recognized you immediately. You look just like your grandmother when she was young." I remained standing, suddenly acutely aware of my rain-soaked delivery uniform and the pizza grease stains on my fingers. I should get back. I have more deliveries waiting. "Please, just a few minutes," Harold insisted. "I haven't seen you since you were a baby. And I have to ask, why is my niece, who I understand graduated from Northwestern, delivering pizzas?" Something in his tone, genuine concern rather than judgment, broke through my defenses. I sank onto the edge of an armchair and gave him the abbreviated version of my situation: the student loans, the competitive job market, the 2 jobs to make ends meet. I carefully avoided mentioning my parents' preferential treatment of Jake. Despite everything, airing family grievances to a long-estranged uncle felt disloyal. Harold listened intently, his expression darkening. "And your parents? They're not helping with any of this?" I shrugged noncommittally. "They believe in self-sufficiency." "For you, perhaps," he said shrewdly. "And what about your brother? Jake, isn't it?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. "Jake is doing well." Harold's knowing look told me he understood exactly what I wasn't saying. "I see." He walked to a desk in the corner of the room, wrote something on a business card, and handed it to me. "I'd like to continue this conversation when you're not on the clock. Call me tomorrow." "Any time." I glanced at the card. Harold Barnes, CEO, Pinnacle Innovations. Below that was a phone number written in elegant handwriting. "You're the Harold Barnes of Pinnacle Innovations?" I asked incredulously. The company was a major player in technology investment and development, frequently mentioned in business publications. He smiled slightly. "The very same. Now, let me pay for this pizza and add a proper tip for keeping it warm in this weather." He handed me a $100 bill. When I protested, he waved away my objection. "Consider it a long overdue birthday present from an absent uncle." I left his apartment in a daze, my mind racing with questions. Why was he in Chicago? Why had he and my father stopped speaking? And most importantly, why was he interested in helping me now? The next day, I called the number, half expecting it to be disconnected or answered by an assistant who had no idea who I was. Instead, Harold himself answered on the second ring. "Amy, I'm glad you called. Can you meet me for lunch today? There's a restaurant in my building, 21st floor. 1 o'clock. I agreed, spending the morning agonizing over what to wear. My wardrobe consisted primarily of work uniforms and casual clothes. I finally settled on black pants and a simple blouse, the outfit I reserved for job interviews. The restaurant was exactly the kind of upscale establishment I could never afford to enter. Harold was already seated at a corner table with a view of the lake. He stood when I approached, greeting me warmly. Over lunch, Harold filled in the blanks of a family history that had been kept from me. He and my father had inherited a modest manufacturing company from their father. While my father wanted to maintain the status quo, Harold had pushed for expansion into emerging technologies. The argument that finally severed our relationship wasn't about business strategy. Harold explained. It was about ethics. Your father wanted to cut corners in ways I couldn't accept. When I refused to go along with it, he bought out my share of the company for a fraction of its value using some legal maneuvering I hadn't anticipated. What happened then? I asked, fascinated by this new perspective on my father. I left with what little I had and started over. Built Pinnacle from the ground up. He smiled wryly. The company your father kept ended up filing for bankruptcy 5 years later. He lost nearly everything and had to start over in financial advising. This revelation stunned me. I had always believed my parents came from stable financial backgrounds. The idea that my father had once failed catastrophically in business cast his obsession with Jake's success in a new light. I've kept tabs on the family from a distance, Harold continued. I knew you were at Northwestern, but I lost track after that. Finding you delivering pizzas was unexpected. He studied me for a moment. Amy, I'm going to be direct. I've reviewed your LinkedIn profile this morning. Your academic achievements are impressive. I have an opening for a project manager in our marketing division. The position requires intelligence, determination, and resilience. From what I can see, you possess all three in abundance. I nearly choked on my water. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you an interview, he clarified. You'll go through the same process as any candidate. If you're hired, it will be on merit, not nepotism. I hesitated, pride and suspicion warring within me. I don't want charity. Harold's expression hardened slightly. I don't do charity, Amy. I do investments. And I have a feeling investing in you would yield exceptional returns. His confidence in me, despite having just reconnected after decades, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. For so long, I had been the afterthought, the one expected to manage on her own. Having someone see potential in me felt alien and wonderful. Why? I asked simply. Why help me now? Harold's eyes softened. Because families should lift each other up, not hold each other back. Because talent shouldn't be wasted delivering pizzas in the rain. And because, quite frankly, I've been looking for someone with your qualifications. I took a deep breath and nodded. When's the interview? The interview process at Pinnacle Innovations was as rigorous as Harold had promised. I went through 3 rounds of interviews with different managers and team members, completed a case study presentation, and underwent a thorough skills assessment. At no point did Harold intervene or show favoritism. In fact, he purposely recused himself from the final hiring decision. When the HR director called to offer me the position of junior project manager in the marketing division, the salary she mentioned made me dizzy. It was more than 3 times what I was making between my 2 jobs combined. Are you sure that's the correct figure? I asked, certain there had been a mistake. Absolutely, she replied. This is our standard compensation for this role. We believe in paying competitively for talent. I gave my notice at both Sunrise Cafe and Giovanni's the same day. My managers were sorry to see me go, but understanding. Jasmine hugged me tightly on my last evening at the pizza place. You're living proof that hard work eventually pays off, she said. Don't forget us little people when you're running the company. My first day at Pinnacle was overwhelming in the best possible way. My office, though small, had a window with a view of the city. My computer was top of the line, and my team seemed genuinely welcoming. My direct supervisor, Diana Miller, was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s who quickly made it clear that she had high expectations. Harold may be your uncle, but in this department, you'll be evaluated solely on your performance, she told me during our first meeting. I don't play politics or favorites. I appreciated her directness. That's exactly how I want it, I assured her. The learning curve was steep. I had to quickly master project management software, familiarize myself with ongoing campaigns, and understand the company's organizational structure. Some nights I stayed at the office until 9 or 10, determined to prove myself worthy of the opportunity. Harold kept a professional distance during business hours, treating me like any other employee. However, he invited me to dinner once a week, where he began mentoring me on broader business concepts and leadership principles. The technical skills will come with practice, he told me during one of these dinners. What separates good managers from great leaders is emotional intelligence and strategic thinking. Under his guidance, I began to see business through a different lens. It wasn't just about marketing campaigns or project timelines. It was about understanding human motivation, anticipating market shifts, and creating value that outlasted quarterly reports. Not everyone at Pinnacle was supportive of my rapid rise. Christopher Marshall, a project manager who had been with the company for 5 years, made no secret of his resentment. Must be nice having the CEO as your personal cheerleader, he remarked loudly enough for nearby colleagues to hear after I was praised in a team meeting. rather than confronting him directly. I decided to let my work speak for itself. When an opportunity arose to lead a challenging marketing campaign for a major client, I volunteered despite Christopher's warning that it was career suicide because the client was notoriously difficult to please. For 6 weeks, I worked relentlessly on the campaign, incorporating innovative digital strategies I had studied but never had the chance to implement. The client, initially skeptical, became increasingly enthusiastic as they saw the results. By the end of the quarter, their engagement metrics had increased by 37%, and they committed to doubling their investment with Pinnacle. Diana called me into her office after the final report was submitted. "I've been in this business for 20 years, she said, "and I've rarely seen someone turn around a difficult client so effectively, especially someone at your experience level." Her praise meant more to me than she could know. I had finally found a place where my abilities were recognized and valued. With my financial situation dramatically improved, I was able to move out of the cramped apartment I shared with Tiffany and Melissa. I found a small but modern one-bedroom apartment closer to downtown. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, paid for with my own hard-earned money. The day I signed the lease was one of the proudest moments of my life. My leadership skills continued to develop under Harold's mentorship. He encouraged me to take risks, learn from failures, and always prioritize ethical considerations in business decisions. 6 months after joining Pinnacle, I was promoted to senior project manager with a team of 3 reporting directly to me. "You've earned this," Harold told me when the promotion was announced. Every step of the way. Around this time, I met Brian Lawrence, the CEO of a startup that was partnering with Pinnacle on a new venture. Brian was brilliant, driven, and refreshingly straightforward. Our initial meetings were strictly professional, but I found myself looking forward to our collaboration sessions more than was probably appropriate. After our 3rd meeting, Brian asked me to dinner to discuss the project he claimed, though his smile suggested other interests. I hesitated, wary of mixing business with pleasure, but Harold encouraged me to accept. "Life isn't just about work, Amy." Trust me, I learned that lesson too late. Dinner with Brian turned into weekly dates. He was the first person I had met who matched my ambition and work ethic, but also knew how to enjoy life. He understood my background and my drive without judgment or pity. "You're the most resilient person I've ever met," he told me one evening as we walked along the lakefront. "Most people would have been broken by what you've been through." With Harold's financial support and flexible work schedule, I began pursuing an MBA through evening classes. The program was intense, especially combined with my full-time job, but it fueled my growing interest in business strategy and leadership. Harold never pushed me to discuss my parents or Jake, respecting my reluctance to delve into painful family dynamics. But as my confidence grew under his guidance, I began to see my family situation with new clarity. What had once felt like a personal rejection now looked more like my parents' own insecurities and failings projected onto their children. I was no longer the desperate pizza delivery girl hoping for scraps of parental approval. I was becoming a successful, independent woman with skills, knowledge, and a support system that valued me for exactly who I was. The transformation wasn't just professional. I stood taller, spoke more confidently, and no longer apologized for taking up space. The dark circles under my eyes faded, replaced by a healthy glow that came from adequate sleep, proper nutrition, and the absence of constant stress. Brian noticed the change too. "You're blooming," he said one evening, like a flower that finally got the sunlight it needed. I smiled, knowing he was right. For the first time in my adult life, I was thriving, not just surviving. And I had no idea that this newfound stability was about to be tested by an unexpected confrontation with my past. 10 months after joining Pinnacle Innovations, I was featured in Chicago Business Weekly as part of their Rising Stars Under 30 series. The article highlighted my rapid advancement at Pinnacle and the successful launch of our new digital marketing platform, which I had helped develop and implement. The photographer captured me in front of the Chicago skyline, looking confident in a tailored blazer, with a quote beneath the image, "Success isn't about where you start, but how determined you are to reach your destination." I was proud of the recognition, but thought little of the article's potential reach. It was a local business publication, after all. Not exactly mainstream reading. I certainly never expected it to find its way to my parents. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in a meeting with my team. Seeing my mother's name on the screen, I excused myself to take it in the hallway, assuming it was our usual monthly check-in. "Amy, darling." My mother's voice had an uncharacteristic warmth and enthusiasm. "Why didn't you tell us about your job at Pinnacle? We had no idea you were doing so well." The sudden interest after months of indifference made my stomach clench. "It didn't come up," I replied neutrally. "And working with Uncle Harold. Your father and I were so surprised. We had no idea you two were in touch." Of course, that was what had caught their attention. Not my achievement, but my connection to Harold. "How did you find out?" I asked. Mrs. Peterson from Dad's office showed him the article. She has a daughter in marketing in Chicago and subscribes to that business magazine. "We're just thrilled, Amy. Simply thrilled." The conversation continued with my mother asking detailed questions about my role, my salary, and especially my relationship with Harold. I answered vaguely, uncomfortable with her sudden interest in the life she had previously shown so little concern for. "We should get together," she suggested eagerly. "Your father and I would love to take you to dinner next time you're home. Or perhaps we could come to Chicago." "I'm pretty busy right now," I hedged. "Maybe sometime in the future." But my mother was insistent, and eventually I agreed to dinner the following weekend at an upscale restaurant in downtown Chicago. My parents would drive in for the occasion. When I shared this development with Harold during our weekly mentoring session, his expression grew serious. "Be careful, Amy. Richard doesn't reach out unless he wants something." His warning proved prophetic. Saturday evening found me sitting across from my parents at Riverview, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. My mother had dressed for the occasion in what appeared to be a new outfit, while my father wore his standard business suit. The first 30 minutes were surreal. My parents asked about my work, my apartment, and my MBA studies with an enthusiasm that would have meant the world to me a year ago. Now it just felt hollow. "We always knew you would do well," my father said, raising his glass in a toast. "You've always been our clever girl." I took a small sip of wine, fighting the urge to remind him of all the times he had dismissed my achievements in favor of Jake's mediocrity. Speaking of family success, my father continued smoothly. "Jake's been doing quite well at the firm, but he's been thinking about exploring other opportunities. More innovative companies, you know." And there it was, the real reason for this dinner. "That's nice," I replied non-committally. "We were thinking," my mother jumped in, "since you and Harold have reconnected, perhaps you could put in a good word for Jake at Pinnacle. With his financial background and your connection, it could be a perfect fit." I set down my fork carefully. "Jake has been out of college for what, a year now? And he wants to leave his first job already." "He's ambitious," my father defended. "He wants to work somewhere with more growth potential." "Pinnacle has a rigorous hiring process," I said. "They look for candidates with proven track records and specific skill sets." "But surely Harold would consider meeting with him as a favor to family," my mother pressed. I looked at them both. These people who had systematically favored my brother while leaving me to fend for myself, now asking me to use my hard-earned position to advantage him once again. "No," I said simply. My father blinked in surprise. No, I won't be recommending Jake for a position at Pinnacle. If he's interested, he can apply through the proper channels like anyone else." My mother's expression fell into familiar disappointment. "Amy, don't be difficult. Family helps family." The irony of her statement hit me like a physical blow. Family helps family? I repeated. Where was that philosophy when I was working 2 jobs to pay for an apartment while taking on student loan debt? Where was family helps family when I was hospitalized with pneumonia and couldn't pay my medical bills? My father's face hardened. That was different. We were teaching you independence. And what were you teaching Jake by buying him a condo and a Tesla? By handing him a job through your connections? What lesson was that exactly? An uncomfortable silence fell over the table, broken only when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to see Jake approaching our table, his expression a mix of entitlement and false affection. Amy, Mom said you were having dinner tonight. I thought I'd surprise you all. He pulled up a chair without waiting for an invitation. My mother beamed at him. Perfect timing. We were just talking about potential opportunities for you at Pinnacle. Jake turned to me with what he probably thought was a winning smile. Yeah, I was thinking it might be time for a change. Somewhere more cutting edge, you know? And since you're in with the CEO now. I earned my position, I said firmly. Every step of the way. Jake waved dismissively. Sure. But you could help out your little brother, right? That's what family does. Something in me snapped. Years of accumulated hurt, resentment, and injustice boiled over in that moment. Family? I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Let me tell you about family, Jake. Family is who's there when you're working until midnight to pay your rent. Family is who offers to help when you're drowning in medical debt. Family is who celebrates your achievements instead of ignoring them. I turned to my parents, whose expressions had shifted from entitlement to alarm. For years, I watched you give Jake everything while I got nothing. Not because he earned it or needed it more, but because for some reason, he was worth investing in and I wasn't. I delivered pizzas in thunderstorms to keep a roof over my head while you bought him a luxury condo. I worked myself into pneumonia while you bought him a Tesla. My voice remained steady, even as tears threatened. The irony is that by forcing me to fend for myself, you made me strong enough to succeed without you. And by giving Jake everything, you've crippled him. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Now you listen here, young lady. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me, Dad? Name one thing in the last decade that you've done to support me. His mouth opened and closed, but no answer came. That's what I thought, I said, standing up. I won't be helping Jake get a job at Pinnacle. If he wants to work there, he can earn it, just like I did. I placed enough cash on the table to cover my portion of the meal. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Enjoy your dinner. As I walked away, my mother called after me, Amy, please. Don't be like this. We're your parents. I paused, turning back one last time. Being parents is about more than biology. It's about support, fairness, and love. When you're ready to be real parents to me, not just when you need something, you know where to find me. The night air felt cleansing as I stepped outside, hailing a taxi to take me home. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. For the first time in my life, I had spoken my truth without apology or compromise. As the taxi pulled away, I saw my family through the restaurant window, their expressions a mixture of shock and confusion. They looked like strangers to me now, people from a past life I had finally outgrown. I felt a curious mixture of grief and liberation. Something had ended tonight, but something new and healthier had begun. I had finally set down the burden of seeking approval from people who had never truly seen me. In the months following the restaurant confrontation, I threw myself into work with renewed focus. Harold and I began discussing a new venture, a specialized digital marketing agency that would operate as a subsidiary of Pinnacle, but with its own distinct brand and approach. You've proven your capabilities beyond any doubt, Harold told me during one of our strategy sessions. I think you're ready to move from employee to entrepreneur. The idea both thrilled and terrified me. You mean start a company? I'm not sure I have the experience for that yet. Harold smiled knowingly. Experience isn't just about years, Amy. It's about what you've learned and how you apply it. Besides, you wouldn't be doing it alone. His proposal was straightforward. Pinnacle would provide initial funding and resources, while I would develop the business model and lead the operation. I wouldn't just be a manager anymore. I'd be a founding partner with equity in the new venture. We spent weeks refining the concept, identifying our target market, and developing our unique value proposition. I poured every insight from my MBA studies and practical experience into the business plan. When we finally presented it to Pinnacle's board of directors, their approval was unanimous. Anthem Digital, as we named the new agency, launched with a team of 8 carefully selected professionals and a portfolio of 3 initial clients that Harold had helped secure. My title was Chief Operating Officer, a position I approached with equal parts determination and humility. Remember, Harold advised on our opening day, leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions and trusting your team to help find solutions. Those words became my mantra as I navigated the challenges of building a business from the ground up. There were setbacks, of course. Campaigns that underperformed, clients who required extensive hand-holding, team members who didn't align with our vision. But there were also triumphs that exceeded our most optimistic projections. 6 months into Anthem's existence, we landed a contract with a major national retail chain that put us firmly on the map. Our innovative approach to integrating social media marketing with traditional channels had caught their attention, and their endorsement opened doors throughout the industry. I was in the middle of a strategy session with our creative team when my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Jake was in the reception area, insisting on seeing me. My first instinct was to refuse. I hadn't spoken to any family members since that night at the restaurant. But curiosity won out, and I asked for 5 minutes before he was shown in. Jake looked different. Gone was the designer suit and carefully styled hair. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, and his expression lacked its usual confidence. "Amy," he began awkwardly. "I know you probably don't want to see me, but I needed to talk to you." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "I'm listening." He sat down, fidgeting with his watch. "I got fired last month. Dad's friend said I wasn't meeting expectations. I wasn't surprised, but I kept my expression neutral. I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not," he said with unexpected insight. "And you shouldn't be. I was terrible at that job. I didn't earn it, and I didn't try very hard because everything has always been handed to me." His self-awareness took me by surprise. This wasn't the entitled Jake I remembered. "After you told Mom and Dad off at dinner," he continued, "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. About them crippling me by giving me everything. At first, I was angry, but then I started looking at my life objectively." He exhaled heavily. "You were right, Amy. I don't know how to work for anything. I don't know how to handle setbacks. The first time I faced real consequences for underperforming, I fell apart." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked cautiously. "Because I want to change. I want to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "And because I owe you an apology. I never recognized how differently we were treated. Because it benefited me. I'm sorry for every time I took what you didn't get. For every achievement of yours that was ignored while mine were celebrated." His sincerity was palpable, and something tight in my chest began to loosen. This was the brother I had always hoped for but never had. "I appreciate that," I said simply. "There's something else," he added. "I'm not here to ask for a job at Pinnacle. I wouldn't deserve it. But I was hoping maybe you could give me some advice about starting over? About earning things instead of having them handed to me." That conversation marked the beginning of a new relationship with my brother. I didn't trust him immediately, but I gave him the chance to prove his sincerity. I suggested he look into entry-level positions at smaller marketing firms where he could learn the business from the ground up. To my surprise, he followed my advice. He took a job as a sales assistant at a local agency, making barely above minimum wage. He sold his Tesla and moved out of the luxury condo into a modest apartment with roommates. For the first time in his life, Jake was experiencing the real world on its actual terms. Our parents were less receptive to change. When they realized Jake's transformation was genuine, they alternated between trying to rescue him from his new circumstances and attempting to re-establish contact with me. I maintained polite but distant communication, unwilling to rush back into a relationship that had caused so much pain. Harold, witnessing this family drama from the sidelines, offered his own perspective. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing, he told me. It's about not allowing past hurts to control your present happiness. His words resonated deeply. I had spent so many years defined by my parents' treatment of me, first as the overlooked child desperate for approval, then as the angry adult holding onto resentment. Neither identity served the person I was becoming. Gradually, I established new boundaries with my parents. We would never have the close relationship I had once craved, but we could have a cordial one based on mutual respect. They would never fully understand the damage they had done, but they did seem to recognize that their actions had consequences. As Anthem Digital continued to grow, Jake proved himself a dedicated employee at his new job. After a year of consistent performance, I offered him an interview for a junior position at Anthem. He went through the same rigorous process as any candidate, and when he was hired, it was on merit alone. "I won't let you down," he promised on his first day. "I know you won't," I replied, "because now you understand that you have to earn your place. Nothing is handed to you here." Working with Jake gave us the opportunity to develop the sibling relationship we should have had all along. We still disagreed sometimes, but there was a new foundation of respect that made those disagreements productive rather than destructive. My personal life flourished alongside my professional success. Brian and I continued dating, our relationship deepening as we supported each other's ambitions. When he proposed after 2 years together, it felt like the natural next step in a partnership between equals. On the day Anthem Digital celebrated its 2nd anniversary, I stood before our now 30-person team, reflecting on the journey that had brought me there. From delivering pizzas in the rain to leading a thriving business, my path had been anything but direct. Success isn't measured by titles or bank accounts, I told them. It's measured by resilience, by the ability to face obstacles and keep moving forward, by knowing your own worth even when others fail to see it. Looking around at the faces of my colleagues, at Harold's proud smile, at Jake's attentive expression, and at Brian's loving gaze, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The road had been difficult, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be. The journey taught me that we cannot control how others treat us, but we can control how we respond. That sometimes the greatest gift is being forced to rely on your own strength. That family isn't always about blood, but about who shows up when it matters most. Most importantly, I learned that your story isn't written by your past or by other people's perceptions. It's written by the choices you make every day, by your willingness to keep turning the page even when the previous chapters have been painful. So, what about you? Have you ever had to overcome unfair treatment to find your own path? Has there been someone in your life who saw your potential when others missed it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to be reminded of their own strength and worth. Remember, sometimes the people who have the least support go on to build the strongest foundations. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to write your own success story, whatever challenges you might face.